Sunil, can you hear me now?
Yes, Tanvi, very clear now.
Okay, perfect.
Yes, thank you.
Unbelievably so. This was at the Google office.
No, yes, no technology, but broadly, I think technology has changed our life for good.
Yeah.
So Tanvi, like as actually the question was around, that the D2C revolution has really started in India, with Shark Tank recently as well. Every household and the SaaS Bahu discussions have been replaced with D2C and CAC, So looking back, where do you see this inflection point for the D2C revolution in India?
Yeah, I mean it's been quite an evolution in content, right? From SaaS Bahu serials all the way down to Shark Tanks, right? But that's an interesting question. The way I'd look at it, Sunil, is I would say that the D2C revolution is probably divided into three parts, right? One is the pre-pandemic. Sorry,
Please go ahead, Tanvi. Yes.
you can hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So as I was saying, I'd probably divide the D2C revolution into three parts: pre-pandemic, during pandemic, and post-pandemic. Right. I think there's a little bit of a myth that it's all started off during the pandemic, but the reality of it is that the D2C revolution actually kicked in pre-pandemic as well. Right. There were large conglomerates, some data-driven companies that wanted to kind of go ahead and connect with their customers directly. Build on first-party data, increase their engagement. So that had actually started off well before the pandemic. What eventually did happen is that the pivot happened when the commerce growth really started coming in during the pandemic phase, right? That really expedited it. And that need for us to actually go ahead and develop one-on-one relationships just got probably even more cemented with the commerce growth that we actually saw during the pandemic phase as well. So I would say the inflection point was clearly the pandemic. The inflection point was the escalation or the growth in terms of large e-commerce adoption that followed in every sector possible, and D2C sector obviously benefited immensely about it. And if I was to draw a parallel just in terms of a data point, right, like direct to consumer or D2C brand queries actually rose by around 533% as a business. So brands rose almost 533% of a business as customers moved online with respect to consumer needs. And I think it was very beautifully called out by a Deloitte survey in 2021, which said that consumers are expecting more than just packages, right? They're actually expecting relationships, right? And they expect the brand to actually know why we bought an X product from that brand. So that's the level of connect that they've expected. And the D2C brands have actually capitalized on this belief and this urge that customers have had. And finally, I think the stat that we could possibly keep in mind again is the fact that almost I think in the next 4 years there's expected to be a 200 million increase in terms of online shoppers, right? And that's probably why VCs and the whole bunch of startups going after D2C brands, etc. So there's ample data to show that hey, there was a start pre-pandemic, inflection during pandemic, and it's here to stay and probably continue.
No, definitely. I mean, completely agree. And I think from our personal experience as well, today we don't buy a product. I think it's more closely connected with the identity. And we're also looking at the experience which the brand is able to deliver. Do you see this more as an urban phenomena with like citizens in the metros adopting D2C brands? Or are you also seeing this happen across like, smaller towns in India?
Sunil, it brings me back to a discussion that I think Vikas and I had almost a year back, right? On the emergence of Bharat, if you remember, in one of your events, right? And I think that it's a shift that's here to stay within metros, as well as the growth will come from probably urban India, right? So again, if you were to look, and it's a factor of, so let's divide it into two parts. I think within urban India at this point of time, what's happening is there are options available to consumers. So consumers are moving from brand A to brand B to brand C. And as more come in, there'll possibly be an interchange of consumers or a swapping of consumers that will happen. But that's an opportunity for all D2C brands. But at the same point of time, if you really are going to see growth, if you need net new consumers coming in, that's going to come from rural India, right? That's from your Bharat audiences per se. And if you were to go draw parallels to any platform or any business which is seeing net new consumers, whether it be YouTube, whether it be GPay, our net new consumers are now coming from Bharat. But at the same point of time, it's important to build the loyalty within urban India as well. And hence, I think it will depend a lot on the brand and at what stage they're at. Early stage D2Cs will possibly see immediate growth in rural, but they'll compete in urban India. The ones that have actually been around for a bit will possibly be consolidating even further in urban India because their products have become stronger, their marketing has been better, they've been better known, their brand recall is probably higher, and continue to add in rural India as well. So I think it's going to be a mix and match of most of this that's going to happen in terms of net new from rural and consolidation in urban.
Right, and I think we do see that across the brands we work with as well at Social Beat. Growth is happening for different brands in different geographies, and it's really exciting to see which products are taking off in which geographies, faster. I think we also have a lot of founders and D2C teams here, Tanvi. A lot of them are looking to scale quickly and have been running a lot of performance campaigns, including at Google at scale, including shopping, search. How do you see like brand building versus performance campaigns, and building that narrative around your brand and investing there? What is your perspective for a D2C founder or team to follow?
I think that's the story of every sales conversation we have with any sort of a brand, don't we? And I don't think it's limited only to D2C brands. It also applies to a whole bunch of traditional brands, etc. as well. I think the analogy I'll draw is our consumer buying patterns, right? It's no longer a straight line. It's no longer linear, right? Like if I was to draw a parallel in terms of what consumer behaviors online are, they search for a product, they research for a product on YouTube, they watch a how-to video, then they go ahead and review it again. It's no longer one straight line. It's a to and fro that continuously tends to happen, right? And I think that's what the opportunity is, that no longer are consumers looking at any one. So no longer should brands be looking at any one channel to go ahead and acquire consumers and drive ROI, right? Performance has its clear advantages and it needs to be an always on, right? It will give you continuity if I look at it. But at the same point of time, brand, if used incorrectly, is a waste of money, right? So the way I put it is, if you were to go and do sporadic brand campaigns, you will definitely see spikes, right? You will see a sudden burst of new consumers coming in, but you will very quickly drop down to ground zero again, which was what your base was eventually, right? And I think that's where always on brands really comes into play as well. How do you start differentiating the impact that brand campaigns will drive to you over a long term? And you need to define your long term basis your business need. It could be 6 months, it could be 1 year, it could be 5 years, depending on where you are on the journey. But I'd urge most brands to look at investments in performance and brand as complementary rather than in silos, because gone are the days where you plan independently. So I think that's number one. And more importantly, there is ample proof of the fact that, and I'll quote an Interbrand report that had actually come out, which basically said something in the lines of, companies that have focused on the importance of their brand over the last 5 years have seen that the value of their brand has been 2.4 times more than those who didn't, right? So there is ample proof of, either via data, either via reports, or brands adjacent to you as well. Look at the new D2C, some of the older D2C brands, right? Look at Mama Earth, classic case, right? They continued on performance. It was about selling their product, but they never dropped the ball on brand. And that's been critical. Look at some of these, like D2C brands that came into a space which was unknown. Meat selling, for example, Licious, right? Fresh to home. This was a space that you and I probably didn't think would ever emerge in this thing. But what they did was, it was about getting products sold, and that to a perishable commodity, sold very quickly. But they went ahead and leveraged the fact that it was about the right logistics, the right timing, how quickly you could deliver, how fresh the meat was. And eventually that brand story is what resulted in the customer base growing to where it is today. And I think that's the opportunity that brands need to look at.
I think they're having some technical issues. But I think to Tanvi's point, what we have also seen, and talking to venture capitalists, is that most of the value is accrued to brands which are able to build that brand story with users, and it's not just performance campaigns. So a lot of VCs, once founders do raise funding as well, we see that their shift moves from just performance campaigns to also investing in brand campaigns and building that brand narrative, investing in influencer marketing. Hey, Tanvi, have you back?
Hi, sorry.
No problem at all. So I was just sharing that even VCs, like the few VCs we work with closely in the D2C space, their first mandate when brands raise investment from them is to actually start investing in branding and not just focus on performance campaigns, because after a certain point of time your performance campaigns will start capping out and you will not be able to grow your brand. I think very interestingly, Tanvi, we brought up Licious and the category which people were not searching for earlier online, right? It was a very new category. Yep. How do you recommend to like founders, who are entering new areas where there's no demand today, there's no search? How should they go about building that new category? And what are some of the learnings from players like Licious? There are a few other categories as well which have done that very well.
Sunil, I don't think there's a straight answer or a complete clear formula to this, right? It's a little bit of trial and error. It's a little bit of learning along the way as well. That comes into play when, especially for categories which are relatively unknown, right? In the online space as well. And these two examples which we spoke about are probably classic cases, right? So I think at the very beginning, companies need to probably make a few of these educated guesses, right, with respect to what works for them, what could impact them. Could a political shift would that possibly go ahead and impact them in the future? Would there be some emerging technology in the future that could possibly impact them? Could there be an unfortunate pandemic of this nature that could possibly impact them? And hence the reason I'm saying that is they need to think of planning their strategy basis eventualities that you possibly haven't seen, right? And hence it becomes extremely critical that they do a bit of soul searching, where you actually decide as to how do you go ahead and deploy your dollars, right? Whether you can deploy it all into performance. Do you need to start building your brand quickly so that in case there's a situation of this nature, you're able to go ahead and retain share and retain top of mind, and this continuity remains? I mean, classic case, right? During the pandemic as well, I'm sure Licious was impacted as a business, but the reality of it is the orders continued as long as the logistics were in place, right? As long as there were no lockdowns, the orders continued. Why? Because they possibly had built a strong brand for themselves as well, and kudos for them to have been able to do that. So I guess it's a little bit of learning along the way as well, and as you kind of move into newer geographies, what may have worked in a previous geography may not necessarily have worked in a new emerging one that's coming up in the future as well. So I unfortunately don't have a straight answer in terms of what would work, but I would definitely say that watch out for consumer behaviors, watch out for patterns, watch out for trends that go ahead and impact them positively, which you then leverage to go ahead and build your marketing strategy going forward.
Absolutely, Tanvi. I think we also have Makul joining us later from Licious to share a bit about their journey. I think also we've seen this at both, right? I think it could be looked at as a very commoditized market, but I think they're also investing in brand, looking at trends and finding that gap has really helped them, now like apply for IPO.
And I think boat has probably been one at the forefront, and kudos to Daman and team for having done this, that they've actually gone ahead and also innovated a lot via content, right? It's about, it wasn't only about the product, it wasn't only about the price point, but it's also about communicating how cool their product looks, right? And the options that they have within it as well. So I think they went ahead and leveraged this a lot differently, where it wasn't necessarily only about price points. All said and done, speakers were available, right? Earpieces were available, but at the end of the day, pods were available. What they went ahead and beautifully did is complemented all this, say that, hey, I have options for you. I have it at the right price point, and I have it available everywhere. So that communication was so beautifully done, and kudos to him to have pulled this off so effectively, and to you folks for having supported them so brilliantly as well.
Thank you. I think it's been a joint journey with the team at Google as well. I still remember like 3.5, 4 years back, we went to the small office of both in Horse Cars in Delhi, and like, they've come a long way, but I think the different thought process of investing in the brand and, building that from day zero, I think that's definitely helped both, stand out in a
yeah. And the whole bunch of brands. Okay, LiveSpace as well, right? I mean, classic case. Who would have ever imagined that you'd be doing interior designing online and then eventually going ahead and moving it down on ground as well? So the whole bunch of brands that have chartered this uncharted territory and been relatively successful in it.
No, definitely, Tanvi. Have you seen, like, I think YouTube also has scaled up a lot over the last few years. Are you seeing the D2C brands leverage this well, more for the like top of the funnel or even for conversions? How is the video asset creation process been, for the D2C brands?
I think it's a mix now. And I was talking to Rohan, who works with you folks very closely, and he gave me a very interesting line, right? Before I connected on this call, he says that, Tanveer, can you guess what are the three behavior patterns that have actually changed since the COVID? And I said, no, tell me. It may be different for me, but it actually was relevant. One was sleeping, the second was working, and the third was watching videos. Right, and you think about it, it is what it is. That is a fact, and that in fact is where YouTube really kind of fits in beautifully. So while video consumption has obviously just skyrocketed with data having become cheaper, that's where YouTube fits in, very beautifully as well. And similar to your first question, right, I think where consumers we need to kind of understand is that as they don't go ahead and buy in a linear fashion, they don't go ahead and consume content in a linear fashion as well. And hence it's important for you that you make sure that your brand, the consumer is aware of the brand of the product, is considering your new product, and is also taking action. And YouTube is no longer only about brand building. It is both upper funnel, but it's also where the penny drops eventually, right? Because that's where you go ahead and use performance products on YouTube as well. And if I was to just kind of refer to, let's say, the Ipsos study that was out a couple of years back, 70% of YouTube viewers say that YouTube makes them more aware about new brands. So great for consideration. And then 50% of shoppers say that online video helped them decide which specific brand to go ahead and buy, right? So which again made it, extremely high from a retention perspective, that the video was really impacting their buying behavior. And 70% of YouTube viewers say that they bought a brand as a result of seeing a YouTube video, right? Which then is eventual conversion, right? So I think gone are the days when you look at it probably entirely from upper funnel. You can definitely continue doing that, but you can additionally also go ahead and leverage it effectively for conversions and performances as well.
No, completely agree, Tanveer. I think even the storytelling and the messaging today, like I think while text still is there, and you have like voice also starting to happen. Video is now like the de facto way to communicate. I think most people prefer.
Yeah. Seeing is believing, right? So Sunil, seeing is believing. So at the end of the day, I think that's where the art of storytelling fits in beautifully on YouTube. Different bites of videos, different versions of it, plethora of content. It just is a win-win for most brands.
No, definitely. No, definitely, Tanveer. And from a future lens perspective, like where do you see the D2C space evolving? Even from Google or the consumer insights, I would love to hear your thoughts on the industry's path forward. Are you seeing D2C brands expand internationally? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
No, I'd actually love to learn from the founders as well as to where do they think this is going to go. But in my view, I'd kind of divide this broadly into three broad headers in terms of what we could watch out for, or what we could leverage. One is obviously business critical for any D2C brand, which is reaching the right consumer, right? So the reality of it being that there are new medias getting added constantly. Connected TV is a big one, right? And a massive one. There's a 25 million plus opportunity right now when it comes to connected TV just in India alone, and it's growing very rapidly, right? So I think the question is, are we leveraging that well enough? Diversified reach via platforms like JMP, DV360 become very, very important. I don't think D2C brands have completely kind of captured that yet. Massive opportunity. So I would say reaching the right consumer or at scale would be an important one. The second one is once you reach them, interacting with them, right? So can you be the differentiator when it comes to interacting with these consumers, right? Can you be seen as one that, hey, has a top of mind recall just because of the way you communicated or interacted with them? And that's where something like an AR, VR integration into your creative piece, your content piece, right? Either via mobile devices becomes very, very critical, right? So I think that's going to be a key. So interaction, your mode of interaction and innovation via content is going to be a key one. And the third one, which we see now D2C brands kind of venturing towards, is market expansion, right? We've seen a wave of D2C brands right now within India. Okay. But if you see the way export as a business and a number of government initiatives are helping grow export as a business opportunity, it's massive, right? There were roughly around $500 billion worth of goods and services exported from India in the last fiscal year, right? Which was around 25% of the GDP. Okay, but more importantly, as per a KPMG study, the forecast was that $50 billion of this export was influenced by digital, right? So I think that's the catch. You are a D2C brand, you're already very strong on digital. $50 billion worth of business is being influenced by digital, possibly. So, massive opportunity already existing on the table, which will only grow the way digital is growing as a media. So, I think if you really want to go ahead and move out, probably due to a pressurized market, if I was to say, a very competitive market, and find a sweet spot which possibly will be your territory, then export is an area that you possibly need to look at. And that's where I think you and I can help the brands really kind of explore such opportunities with respect to interest on their products or categories.
Definitely, Tanvi. I think Google also has a separate team now, and we've been working closely on the international expansion. And I think we already have some case studies in the industry now, like Badam Teas and brands which are going global.
Correct.
And I think those are going to be inspiration for founders and teams here. And I think a very insightful discussion, Tanvi. I think running out of your time on your calendar, but I think I had a lot to take away, especially on thinking of brand and performance jointly, and thinking of it as always on and how it can drive performance there. And I think your aspect on the connected TVs, 25 million connected TVs. So it's not today just mobile and desktop, but you're also looking at connected TVs and probably other screens in the future as well. So I think it's a very exciting time for D2C founders. Any final message you'd like to share with the founders and teams here?
I would just urge each one of them to keep engaging with Google as well. Sometimes insights from them prompt us to come out with more creative solutions as well. Coincidentally, yesterday we were in an insight session with an EV brand which was actually presenting to us. We weren't presenting. And it was so insightful that it's actually made us think a bit differently in terms of how EV brands could evolve from a Google strategy. So keep sharing with us. We learn from you, and will possibly be able to help you kind of expedite your journey towards growth in the future as well. But thank you so much, Sunil, for the opportunity. It's always a pleasure to be part of the summits that you folks host.
No, thank you, Tanvi. I think the humility, despite the contribution in the economy and society, I think you, Meenakshi, Rohan, I think amazing support, and thanks to Shalini as well. I think it's been a joy to work with the Google team, and I think all our clients will also vouch for that, that we continue the journey of scaling up together with Google. Thank you so much, Tanvi.
Thanks, Sunil. Take care. Bye. All the best.
Bye. Pranab,
yes.
Let me hand it over to you for the next session with Vakul.
Yep. Thank you so much, Sunil. And thanks again, Tanveer, for that insightful Q&A. Moving forward, we have Vakul here with us, with whom we will be discussing how we can drive hyperscale growth for a lot of brands. In the interest of time, I'll quickly keep the introduction very brief. Welcome, Vakul. Thank you for joining us today. Quick introduction to everybody who's here. Vakul is an IIT Bombay graduate who's been in the industry for over 9 years now. He's played a front leader role at Grofers, which is now Blinkit, driving their growth and strategy over the for a good part of 6 years. And today he leads the growth at Licious. Thank you for joining us, Vakul. Really excited to have you.
Oh, I'm also excited to be here, and thank you for the introduction, Pranav. Hey, Sunil.
Yeah, I think without further ado, we'll get started in terms of the questions we had, and sort of picking your brains on the D2C space and what's been happening today. To start off, I think from Grofers to Licious, you've been right at the front leading e-commerce and D2C revolution for a lot of these brands. Just want to understand from you how the journey has been, and what part of it you like to highlight.
See, Grofers majorly was a long stint to figure out what the right product market fit would be for us. We started by delivering convenience in 2015, and our model was order anything and you'll get it delivered in 90 minutes. It was a marketplace model. Soon realized that will not work for us. There was no product market fit. The retention was fairly poor, and that is one of the signs to figure out whether the business was working or making sense for us or not. Took inspiration from DMart, the largest retailer out there. And no one at that time in 2016 in the online space was talking about better prices on groceries. So did that, saw some initial success, And our business grew from 2016 till 2018 at a decent pace, with the cost metric always checkmarked. In 2018, almost everyone, be it Flipkart, Amazon, Reliance Jio, and other players, including BB, which is Big Basket, entered with the same proposition, which is get groceries at the lowest price. And then again, we're in that dilemma and what should we do now? Because almost everyone is saying the same thing, and business is not growing at that rapid, fast pace. And then 2020, late 2020, in fact, November, is when we kind of decided that, okay, let's try to do a convenience-led solve, but using our own inventory instead of using a marketplace. That is what you see in terms of Zeptos of the world or Blinkits of the world, which again is working beautifully well right now, just that the competition is just heating up. Today, Big Basket has also announced that they'll do a 10-minute grocery delivery as well. Right. So that was the major part at Grofers. At Licious, because it's a D2C brand, the expectation changes. Now we obviously need to compete with the likes of Fresh to Home and other players in this category. So that is there. But you also need to compete with the Zeptos and Swiggies of the world because you're also delivering the product, right? So customer will obviously expect a delivery time which is not very laid back to what they are getting from other competitors. The third thing is that your platform on which you are selling, which is your app and website, again needs to be top notch because the same user who might be ordering from Swiggy is ordering from Licious as well. And hence, all your delivery services, all your product experiences, and the quality of the product that you actually deliver, all three needs to be a check mark. And that is why D2C is such an interesting space to be in. It's the best of all three worlds.
Completely agree with you. I think a lot of the brands that we speak with as well today, they want to be D2C, and for them, it's bringing people to the platform. But a lot of times we forget to focus on the platform itself, how good an experience is the platform providing. And glad to hear about Licious as well. My next question was about Licious, how you've created an entire category for meat to home in India. So just want to understand from you how you're looking at scaling Licious, from the leadership position that you're in today, and what do you foresee as challenges or opportunities?
So see, the Licious story, if it comes from me, you might not believe it, but I visited the processing plants and the actual supply chain. The difference in what we have versus how the category operates, you'll be just shocked to see the difference. I jokingly said to my wife that I'll stop eating non-veg if it is not from Licious after seeing the processing plants, right? That is how stark the difference is. Now, that is known to me because I visited the plant, right? You can't expect a user to visit a plant and then take a call. Now, how do we bring that story in front of the users is the job to be done. The passion that the founders have at Licious, and there is the saying that Abhay is the founder and he has a little daughter, right? He always used to say when I was interviewing as well, right? That if I can't feed my daughter, then I can't feed any of the user. It's just like, founders to bolte rehte. It's okay, right? But to look at that passion and what he has done on the supply chain is just tremendous. So right now, the primary job to be done at our end is first to tell the difference that a Licious product goes through on the supply chain and present it in front of consumer, because right now no one knows. Just to give you an example, right? The value-added products that these guys cook in the factory, right? They use virgin olive oil, and on the package they just write oil. No one knows that it's made in a virgin olive oil, etc. Right? So that is the job to be done first. The second is the platform is not really that great. So if you compare a Swiggy versus a Licious app, there are various differences. So how do we ensure that we play on the front foot on the tech or the platform piece that is there? And the third thing is because everyone is moving at shorter delivery times, right? You're now hearing 10-minute delivery, 30-minute delivery, 45-minute delivery. So how do we ensure that we are upping our game on the delivery piece as well, right? So these three things are most important for us right now.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think really interesting to hear about the overall processing unit and how we're trying to bring that quality as a differentiator as well, which brings me to the next question. I mean, how do we communicate a lot of this to the users? I think it's the brand that plays the role, right? So if you could throw on how it's like, say, for example, if you had to take Grofers today, right? Grofers is rebranded to Blinkit. So what do you see is the difference in the brand proposition and what they're trying to build there?
So two things. Grofers always stood for lowest prices, and we were hammering that message for last 5 years. Right? And when we shifted our proposition, which is from prices or savings to convenience first, we tried that using the same name, Grofers. But the recall within our loyal users was very high in terms of, do we get the same price? Right? Are we getting the best of the savings? And they used to always compare us with the likes of DMart or Reliance, Fresh, etc., because they used to always compare prices. So that was a dilemma at our end. How do we tell them that we are no longer providing the best of the prices, but we have shifted gear in terms of providing convenience as a primary benefit towards users? And then is when we thought that, okay, it's better to change the name of the brand because the association is so strong. It will probably be more expensive for us to change the association than have a different name altogether and build that association from grounds up, right? So that is how the shift happened. And that's the background story on that. But like you said, right, the brand needs to talk about the benefit that you are providing to a user in a very seamless way, right? Blinkit has not done a brand campaign, right? At Licious, we are trying to figure out what is the perfect or a good product market fit for us in this category. And once we have figured that out, then is when we'll want to talk about that, right? But yeah, that was.
Brand building plays a very crucial role. And I think our next also speaks about that, how many founders sort of, they speak of, focus on performance, bring me a lot of users, acquire a lot of new users, but that sort of cuts them short on the brand front. And, it's late later to revise that and fix that. So how have you seen that impact brands in the long run? And does it impact long-term success?
It does, right? Because it's not 1-0, right? It has to be both together. And the good part about brand is if you do it right, it can unlock some serious growth for you, right? In brand, 1 + 1 will not be equal to 2. It could be 6 as well, but that 1 + 1 could also be a 0. Unlike a performance wherein a 1 + 1 will always be 2, right? So that is why brand can seriously unlock growth if done in the right way. To figure that out, I think the essential things is whether business is seeing solid retention on the benefits that they're giving to users. Do they see good organic acquisition? And is the NPS good enough or not? Once all these three are validated, you know that you have figured out a service which people appreciate. Now it is the best time for you to take the service and project that brand message across various geographies or regions that you're operational in. And then the brand marketing will do its job. But you need to do it right. And again, it's not 0-1. You need to do it both at the right time. Performance, obviously, you can continue. Brand, you need to be very sure when you want to intervene.
Completely agree. I think a lot of our conversations also today with D2C brands is around the same lines. It's not just a performance game, and how can we marry brand and performance? Moving on to the next question, Vakul. I think you work with millions of customers today, and there's so many customers we've acquired. How do you stay in touch with these consumers, and what kind of a role do you think insights play from consumers in your communication strategy?
See, insights is a very central function, right? It gives us almost all the levers, and insights is both quantitative and qualitative insights. So I'm including data insights also in that piece, right? So that becomes very important for us. Now, how do we do, and what are the channels that we use? So there are 3 primary channels. One obviously is all your digital platforms that are available to you. Right? The second is all your CLM platforms. If you are a D2C brand or an internet brand, and all your notifications, emailers, SMSs, and also the in-app properties that you own. And that becomes a very important channel. And the third is obviously ATL and other channels that you would want to explore, right? So these are the 3 channels. Now, basis the data that you have, which is first-party data, you can easily slice and dice your audiences and different cohorts or segments that you seem are appropriate for your business. The way we have done it is very simple. We have divided users and whether these users are profitable for business, not so profitable for business, very poor for business. Right. And these take inputs in terms of what device they're using, where do they live, what is the recency, frequency, average order value that these users inhibit for the business. Right. Using this cohort strategy, and then reaching out to your insights team saying that, okay, I see a decline in my profitable cohort in February. Can you tell me what is the reason? Then they will mine data. They'll also connect with few of the profitable users, try to identify what are the top 5 or 3 reasons that they are not repeating with business. And then you try to solve the problem if it is solvable. For example, assortment is less in Feb. Know that, okay, your profitable users felt that the assortment in February was less. Then can you go to the supply chain team or the category team, first validating and knowing why it was less, and then what are the steps that you will take to ensure that it is not happening again in March. So that is how critical is the insights team role at Licious. And the same was true at Grofers as well.
Absolutely. I think, yeah, we've also seen that insights play a crucial role, and glad that you mentioned quantitative insights as well, because my next question to you is, as a growth leader, what key metrics do you look at tracking when it comes to growth and sort of building these D2C platforms the way we have? Yeah.
So see, on a daily basis, the matrices that we look at is how many new and old DAUs you're getting, what is the conversion for these two cohorts, the average order value that we see, and the cost metric, how much are you spending. Gross margin is one thing that we obviously look because EBITDA is important at this point in time, at the stage at which Licious is. So these are the matrices that we look on a daily basis. On a slightly longer view, you also measure retention across different cohorts, how the retention is moving. And one important metric that we follow is wallet share, which is nothing but average order value into number of times a user is transacting in a month. So is that moving for your loyal users or not? That becomes very important. But like I said, on a daily basis, your DAUs, conversions, average order value, the cost metric across different cohorts is what we look at.
Makes sense. Following on the same sort of conversation, and how do these metrics sort of percolate through the organization, and how are they being sort of making sure that, we hit the success metrics with those KPIs?
So on an org level, it's slightly a long-term vision that we define. So OKR, I'm assuming everyone would know about, right? So it comes from revenue number that you would want to chase as a business, which gets broken down into users, right? New and old. Old is very critical for a D2C or an internet company because retention plays an important role. And that is where most of the revenue lies. So retention is inbuilt in the old piece. New user is a PMF exercise wherein if your product market fit is really awesome, then your organic acquisition and your CAC will be low. And hence your retention of new users will also be very solid. So that is how at least it is broken down. EBITDA is a different line item wherein you are always working towards cost efficient growth and not really are depending on spending more money to get more growth, right? And that is where your marketing cost as a metric to your revenue lies. And how much are you spending as a percentage of your revenue? That is always a check metric. So these are the two important OKRs on a company level. And that is how it percolates down to almost each and every one of us, at least in the revenue team.
A lot of investment also happening on videos today and creator focused content, right? And I think Tanveer was also mentioning in the previous chat that video is really helping discovery and conversion for a lot of brands. How are you at Licious sort of leveraging creators and videos?
So we have started leveraging influencers right now. Videos, we have seen enough validation that they perform the best, right? Unfortunately, we don't have a in-house team who can create or churn videos at a really fast pace. So we are out looking for an agency who can help us in the interim, right? On the content piece though, like you said, we are working closely with few of the home chefs. There are multiple home chef influencers on YouTube and even on Instagram, because that is a very relevant genre for us, right? So that is what we are exploring, and that has also given us initial good success. Right? The content is majorly innovated by the influencer themselves. In our case, because we want it to be organic when they post it to their users. But yeah, that piece has been working really well for us. It has been only 2 months that we started this initiative, but it's going quite strong.
Makes complete sense. I think we're nearing the end of our chat. So I think if you had to give all the D2C founders here and the teams that have joined us, one key takeaway in growing or hyperscaling D2C brands, what would that be that, we could all take away from the chat?
See, one thing is don't be an FMCG company. If you're a D2C company, there is a difference, right? We can easily sell delicious products on Swiggy and Zomatos of the world. No one stops us from doing that, but then you'll not get the multiple that you get for being a D2C company, because there you own all the three aspects, which is product, which essentially an FMCG company owns, the platform where a user is coming to buy, and hence you own the user. And third is the delivery experience, which again you own. So that you should definitely try to have all the information about the customer at your end. And that is first. The second is don't rest until you figure out a good product market fit. There are only three matrices which will help you determine. One is whether your attention is solid or not. Second, how good or bad is your organic acquisition. Third, is the NPS good or bad, right? Till you have not figured out your product market fit, then your business is always in danger, either from a competition or getting not so decent growth, or getting growth at a very high cost. So these would be my two short advice.
No, makes complete sense. Well, I think before we wrap up, there's one question from the audience as well. Not sure, we'd have the answer, but the question is, how is the delivery industry sort of growing? When we're seeing that ticket sizes of products are going down and the costs of logistics are sort of increasing.
So I think, see, a user will always think on that sense that if I order a pack of milk, then how will Swiggy or a Blinkit will do the last mile, right? But if you look at from their point of view, it makes perfect sense. Now Zomato, or say, let's take an example of Swiggy. Swiggy delivers food. That was their main business. The two peaks were always in the afternoon and in the evening. Lunchtime is, say, roughly between 1 to 3. Evening dinner time is 7 to 10, for example. The grocery peak happens at a very different time. It happens from 10 to 1, and in the evening, it happens from 5 to 7. So if you're ordering a pack of milk, they don't need to pay anything to the delivery guy. That delivery guy already works for them. And the peak is very different. Now, with the same force, they are just churning more orders, right? And that is why it makes sense for them, right? It's different peaks, guys.
Absolutely interesting. Interesting thought. I mean, we've never thought of it from that point of view, because I think we lack the perspective as well on the logistics side sometimes, being focused on the product so much. But yeah, Sunil, any questions that you
I think, no, Vakul, I think we worked very closely previously as well in other startups. It's been great to hear your thoughts as well. How do you look at retention, this new category like Licious has created it? When at Grofers, you were really creating that category over the last few years, right? So how do you all see changing the consumer behavior plus retention?
First is, in this category, at least Licious, the competition or the category is at a very nascent stage. The entire online market, maybe you add everyone, whatever competition that you see is very small in terms of top line. And the offline practices are very unethical. As in, what they sell is not really the kind of product that you would want to consume at home, or you would want to get it delivered for your loved ones. So it is at that very nascent stage wherein first you need to tell the truth of the category to the user, because right now no one knows. I also never knew. Right? I just got to know that because I visited few of the places. So first tell the truth of the category, then tell how you are different. right? And don't just tell, right? People should also believe. If I tell you that I am the best just by saying that, okay, I do this, then there is no point, right? How do you convince the user that, okay, what they are saying makes sense and I can believe them? So that is the job to be done, not to create category, just to ensure that people are consuming the right food at their home. Right? So that's the passion. Business will come on its own if you do that right.
No, that's great to hear again about the vision of the founding team. Where do you see the future, Vakul, in terms of scale and the plans?
So see, like I said, very small category in terms of online penetration. The offline penetration is massive. The growth in this category will be much faster than at least what I have seen at Grofers in form of Grofers or Blinkit. So that I'm very sure. But yeah, let's see how it unfolds.
No, it's I think Delicious is the benchmark, and not just for that meat space, but overall as well in terms of creating like a new category itself, right? So all the best, Vakul. Thank you so much for taking out the time and having the discussion.
No, pleasure is all mine, guys, and thank you for inviting me, guys. Real pleasure for me as well.
No, thank you, Vakul, and have a great day, and we'll catch up soon.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Chalo. Bye.
Yes. Tej, over to you. I think, do we have Daman with us?
Yes, thank you, sir.
Yes.
Hi, Daman. Good afternoon.
Hey, Tej, what's up?
All good. How are you doing, Daman?
Hi, Daman.
All good.
Great. Thank you, Daman, for joining us for today's session. So I think firstly, before we start off, I just wanted to quickly do a quick introduction about Daman to all our people attending the current webinar here. So I think quickly about Daman here is that Daman is a thought leader in the growth and the hyperscaling industry here, specifically for D2C brands. He's been a marketing maverick till now. He's also been worked earlier in this past as a CMO and a growth head for Boat, MobiKwik, and Milk Basket. Adding on to that, Daman is an ISB alumnus and now at Global Bees, the Chief Business Officer. Currently at his stint at Global Bees, he's been working on scaling up D2C brands like Angme, The Better Home, Reach are among a few of them that he's currently been working. And I think from our side, from the Social Beat side, Daman, we really want to thank you for taking out this time and being a part of this session. And I think everyone's really looking forward to getting some great insights from you on how to scale up D2C brands and learn a lot from your experience as well. So I think before we begin, I think there's a quick intro deck that Daman wanted to discuss with everyone as participants over here. So I'll quickly share my screen. And if someone can just confirm if my screen is visible, we can just quickly take that forward.
Yep, all good, Tej.
Perfect. Thank you. I'll just put it on presentation here. Sorry.
Hi guys, just wanted to quickly take you through what Global Bees is. Since we're a new company, I just thought I'll introduce what we do. I've got nothing to do with honey. We're basically, building a conglomerate of micro brands by acquiring, nurturing, and growing brands. This is very different from play that you see typically in the USA. Here we involve ourselves completely, right from manufacturing all the way to marketing. Can we move to the next slide? Yeah. So, like I said, right, we kind of work with entrepreneurs, right from manufacturing, supply chain, distribution, product, and helping them scale up their brand or marketplaces or even their website. If you can move to the next one. Yeah, and how do we do this? We've built a omni-channel distribution channel. We've got a warehouse in practically every state. We've got an awesome team of marketers, which works very closely with the social media team. Both for performance and brand marketing. We built a whole enterprise tech backbone, a manufacturing network, and a whole team around new product development. So that's how we work very closely with any of the D2C brands which come onto the Global Bees fold. So just wanted to introduce that, leave it here, and I think we can, move forward.
Sure. Thank you so much, Daman, for the quick introduction about Global Bees. I think this does set context for everyone out here. So I think since we're talking about Global Bees here, I think firstly, a big congratulations to the Global Bees team as well as you for becoming a unicorn very recently in this very short span of time. So I think we just also wanted to understand how has the journey been overall, because it's been hyperscaling, reaching that unicorn mark. How's that overall journey been for you along with the team here?
So it's been quite exhilarating and tiring, let me put it that way. In this short span of time, we've integrated 13 plus companies. Uh, uh, we've acquired a lot more, but the paperwork's taking time, and they'll also be coming in. So it's practically a company coming in every 10 to 15 days, which means an entrepreneur with his team and his own working culture coming in. And this is all happening. This is all happening. At the time when we've also building our own company, right? In terms of infrastructure, in terms of going live on multiple marketplaces. So unlike the US, where you have typically Amazon, leading the charge. In India, there is Amazon, Flipkart, Myntra, Nykaa, Jio, Big Basket, Trell, Meesho. So we've got to work with a ton of players all around. Leverage our relationships over there to help brands grow. Also, in India is a huge manufacturing setup, like unlike the US. So it's not about importing good from China or Vietnam and selling them here. A lot of the goods are produced here. So working very closely with the supply chain, being vertically focused in terms of merchandising, new product development. So it's building up all these teams and working through all these different things simultaneously, right in the middle of when we had a third wave. So it's been a pretty interesting time to say.
So I think how I always used to say that it's been a hustle. It's just been chaotic, but you have been making sense in the whole chaos over there. So I think that's been really great. And I think the point you really mentioned right now about talking was the manufacturing part, because I think people still don't believe that a lot of manufacturing is done in India. So on that part, I had my second question here, because I think a lot of D2C brands that are currently present in our country, they are planning to look at building a brand right now, but I think they are not able to understand that how do we own our customers. I think a lot of brands just believe that having a growth strategy in place would actually help you get your customers and own them, but it's actually to do more about not just having just a growth strategy there. So just wanted to understand your thoughts and your advice on this point here.
So I'm going to say something contrarian here. Owning the customer doesn't mean having the customer's email ID and phone number. That is in no way owning a customer. Owning a customer is when you wake up this person in the middle of the sleep and you say, I said washing powder, what will you say? That is owning the customer. And to be able to do that, you have to do two things, right? One is be a fairly visible brand and evoke an emotion in the consumer's mind. And second is deliver on the promise in terms of an awesome product and experience when the consumer is using that product. Today we hear a lot about having your own website and owning the customer. I don't think that's very true in the sense that it's being portrayed, but yes, it is true in the sense that the customer can have much enriched user experience about what your product is and understand your brand story and your backstory far better, because there's a lot more screen that you can allocate over there as opposed to seeing the next SKU with the price and the review. But owning the customer also means engaging the customer either via content, via communities, via the packaging, via the product being used and the response. That's when you end up engaging the customer, right? And unlike I would say 20 years ago, where people said iconic brands are built, but that was also because there was a huge barrier for smaller brands to create iconic brands because it required an insane amount of money. Okay, so let me explain that. At that point in time, if you had money, you would go and do a TVC. Okay, today if you do a TVC, you end up spending 7 to 8 crores minimum, right? And no TVC is a failure because after spending 7 to 8 crores, no marketer is going to say I failed, right? So today you can reach the consumer far faster by either a marketplace or either a website or either through a content platform wherein the consumer is repeatedly coming to consume the kind of content that your brand is around, right? So the process of creating a brand has been democratized, right? Because it's far easier to reach the customer. But what that also means is it's become far noisier, right? Your Instagram scroll, if your brand is not portraying an awesome piece of content, will get tapped out. Okay, they will not watch your reel, they will not watch your story. So people want, while you say attention spans are short, but people are also spending more and more time with brands that they love. Okay, so there's a lot of dichotomies and paradoxes that are existing in today's world. So there is no silver bullet ki yahi karo and that's how you create a brand. So there are multiple routes which people are taking to reach that.
I think, Daman, right now when you mentioned about the TVC part, and I think that was one of my follow-up questions also for you right now after this, was to ask, because I think when I've spoken to a few co-founders and entrepreneurs out there, I think they all have this conception that if you want to build a massive brand, it requires a massive amount of financial investment into it. But I think they also, like how you mentioned, talking about content or even kind of having a zero cost marketing strategy. So I think a lot of founders I know right now, I just feel they only think about investments. So like one point you mentioned as a tip, which was that if you have the right kind of a content out there, it does grab eyes, it does grab eyeballs over there. So are there any other things that you've seen in the past which have worked as a zero cost marketing strategy? Some tips for all our founders or some entrepreneurs who are on the call that someone can learn from here?
Oh yeah, I mean there are tons of ways in which you can build love with the customer and market yourself to the consumer without spending a lot of money. I mean, nothing is zero cost, but I mean you don't need to spend a ton of money, right? For example, in the early days, I mean I recommend every founder to go and talk to the consumers, right? Once you bought some product and an early adopter has come in and bet on your brand and saying this lipstick looks good, let me just try it on, and founders calling, right? That builds an right? That person will talk the kind of conversation you have, right, with the consumer, and this is happening. So I mean, you'll not be calling him into cheaping another one, right? You'll be calling him to understand what that person felt while using this, and that gives you a lot of content to use back into your website. That gives you a lot of copy, right, to write again. Early days, when a D2C brand is starting up, you won't have a lot of data with you. Okay, the common mistake that a lot of users do, a lot of founders do, is they use that little bit data and they try to run their company in a different direction, right? Early on, what you need to do is access a lot of subjective data. So while one part of the marketing is talking to the consumer and building an opinion leader, the second is also getting a lot of content for your copy, right? That much. Then another way of doing this is, again, not a very free per se, but suppose you're launching a new SKU, right? Bundle it up with an existing larger SKU and give it for free. Give a sample size for free, right? Now there are companies which help you do a lot of sampling, right? Like Smithers and all those gateways distribute a free sample. But there are a lot of, I think before doing that, you should use your own consumer base to sample, right? If they like, let's say, almond oil, they like an almond shampoo, right? Give them a one-time usage, small almond shampoo. And you know what? Give them a call after 10-15 days. And you'll get an idea. People will say, your oil is very good, but your shampoo is not great. I like a better smelling shampoo, or so on and so forth. And that will help you, innovate really fast. So like this, there are tons of experiments that you can run. Getting testimonials is something which I spend a lot of my time right now. Right, every testimonial in the online world counts. I think that is the physical manifestation of the word of mouth. Okay, someone willing to take time out and write for you. I think that's awesome, right? See, as marketeers, we tend to think that the consumer is always thinking about that. No, the consumer is not thinking about a brand. There are a lot of problems at home. He's not giving your brand more than 5 minutes of your day. And not even more than 50 seconds of your day, right? But if he's taking the time out and spending 1 extra minute to write about you, I think you're home, right? Because not only that leads to your SEO, leads to social proof, but also it's got an opinion leader over this saying, I actually love this brand. Okay, subconsciously you did a review, and then this person may also talk about it at a later point in time. Right. So yeah, these are the tactics here.
I think Daman, you would also love to see one of this as a topic on your blog section as well. I think that would be interesting for all of us to go through and get some more tips from you also very regularly over here.
No worries, karta hu.
Sure, thank you, Daman. So I think one more thing which we have also spoken about and we do hear from you also a lot is about talking about the North Star metrics. I think that's something you very fondly talk about and you share with the consumers over here. So I think we also wanted to kind of understand from you that for a brand which is just starting off right now, you already mentioned about having the right kind of a data, understanding customers and all, but on the KRA side or kind of setting their North Star metric right, what should be an ideal approach for a brand to take for this?
Okay, so there are multiple ways to look at the North Star metric. A lot of times people put revenue as a North Star metric, which is okay. It is a decent North Star metric, but if you dig deeper, it should always be the value that you are giving to the user. The revenue is going to be a function of what value you give to the user. So it's very fundamental for you to figure out exactly what is the value that you're giving. Like Airbnb, my favorite example, is number of nights, right, that a person has stayed. Zoom call is number of meetings in a week, right? Because you don't open a Zoom call every day. So you need to figure out what is that exact metric that you want to measure, which will help you capture the value that you're delivering to the consumer, right? For a company like us, while we think we know our North Star metric, but we still not hit the nail on the wall and saying yes, you want to live with this, right? So some of the metrics that we track is obviously number of orders in a day, revenue, like I said, is an early North Star metric, but we also look at output metrics like bestseller rank. How many of my products are in the number one bestseller rank, right? So that means the velocity is high. That means people are coming back. There's more repeat users happening, and how do I go about building that? So these are some of the things that we look at. But I think what you also need to understand is North Star metric is one metric, but and that's the hero metric, right? You have to break it up into smaller parts. You have to break it up into smaller metrics, which you have to then break it up into KPIs, right? And these KPIs then translate into OKRs at a later point in time. But an early stage startup, if you can break the metric into smaller parts and go after each one of them, to complete an order, you need to first drive users onto the platform, right? And then you have to generate repeat users. And then how do you generate repeat users? You have you create a subscription, for example, or you put a reminder email, right? When you think the product is going to get over, so on and so forth, or you generate a word of mouth, right? So these are kind of things that you'll have to keep figuring out. How do I move the needle on each one of those smaller metrics so that I can keep reaching closer and closer to the North Star metric. I mean, keep improving my North Star metric. So that's how typically you want to think about a framework for a North Star metric rather than just saying revenue high, but revenue comes from new users and existing users. Existing users, we can break it into these three parts. New users we get from these four channels, so on and so forth.
Sure. And I think, Daman, as you were mentioning about the North Star metric, and you also mentioned about breaking it into different KPIs and all, I think as a strategy, because I think a lot of brands keep evolving from time to time, they maybe at times change their overall outlook on the business that they're looking for right now. So in your advice, would you suggest that to have the North Star metric constant at least for a long span of time, or if needed, understanding the overall situation, if there's a requirement to evolve it, it should be done then and there?
Yeah, the North Star metric typically doesn't change. The other metrics change, right? The metrics that you focus on. I may focus on retention, or I may focus on number of drinks that I've consumed, or something like that. But it will kind of be the constant. The other metrics, the one metric that matters for a market, as a team choose to focus on one particular metric. At Global Bees, these days we are focusing on getting as many SKUs live from a common seller. Right? So that is the metric that we're going after. We're not figuring out is seller with how much sales we're doing, because we know collectively across 4 sellers we're doing good sales, right? So, but obviously, like I said, BSR ones or revenues, those are the metrics that we're looking at. So if I know if I make this seller very big, the seller rating goes high and so on and so forth, and that will feed into that. So my focus changes every month, but my North Star remains the same.
Understood. I think so. Basically, North Star metric, we need to have it constant and then maybe pivot things around it, basically to keep evolving it time to time as per our business objectives. I think that would be your overall advice over here. And I think, Daman, I think since we are talking about how building about D2C, how to grow also as a brand and get tips from you, I think a lot of marketers nowadays believe that basically you need to, if you want to grow your brand, you can only start on marketplaces. I think they don't see the potential at times in terms of that, oh, if I go D2C, I might not see that scale. So maybe for any kind of a brand that's coming into the market, what would be your advice? Would you advise them to know first go to marketplaces, or first start from your own home ground and then see where you can grow, or just go all out?
So let me give you the different facets of the thing, right? And then every brand has its own journey. A marketplace is a place where there is already a lot of traffic happening, right? A lot of the buying behavior for certain categories has moved to the marketplace. For example, toys, right? People have stopped looking at Google, but opening up probably a Flipkart or Amazon app and then looking for toys for kids under six years. So do you want to then create your own website and tap into the Google's traffic and then come there, or do you want to get into the marketplace wherein a user is already there and trying to figure out a solution, right? Having said that, if you go marketplace first, all marketplaces optimize for price. So if you're not a price warrior product, you'll face difficulty initially, right? Trying to ramp up the product because the algo will not kick in doing searchability for your product. But if you are not a price warrior, you want to create a lot of content and then bring folks on your website, then that's a good move, right? So it's something that every company will need to take a call on what works. Okay. Now also in marketplaces, if you're going, it's a war, right? If you're listing a product in a very competitive category, right, you will have to go. It'll take up a lot of your bandwidth, right? Because the marketplaces are highly optimized to get the product into the consumer's hand as soon as possible, and as cheaply as possible, right? So if you're screwing up on your supply chain early on, right, you start getting negative points over there. So and then again, it's going to be tough coming back up. So you want to figure out what you want to do, which way you want to go. Your own website gives you a lot of time to optimize your product as the whole supply chain to be able to create a good experience with the user. You probably want to get your act right and then get on the marketplace. So there's no right answer to it. Okay. But what you need to understand is just list down the pros and cons of each place. Okay. And be very clear about what you're trying to achieve in the next 6 months and more important in the next 2 years. Then the answer will automatically come. It'll come to you. If you're going mass market and you want an insane number of transactions, hands down, get on the marketplace as soon as possible, right? Because building the traffic onto your own website is going to take a lot of time. SEO links are now number 8 in the Google links for a highly competitive category. There are 4 paid links, then there's a video, and then this question. Then your organic one. So you're going to be very far before someone discovers.
Sure, I think that does, help us a lot, because I think a lot of brands we also see right now, first they're like, oh, we go on to marketplaces. Now, when they want to scale their D2C, I think they start competing within themselves only, not to show that where do we take the consumer at the end and where do we make sure they're converting. So I think coming from that D2C part, Daman, I think since you've been into this industry for a very long time and you have created some great case studies, I think, which a lot of us also personally follow on a very day-to-day basis closely here. So I think in this industry, do you see any kind of trends or something that as entrepreneurs or marketers that we can watch out for, or maybe I'd make an attempt that, okay, this could be a foresee future, which we can adopt into our strategies right now?
You're talking specifically about marketing or about product?
I'm talking from overall as a trend on D2C, anything that you feel. It could be a product also, it could be some kind of a strategy as well. So any tips from your end that you think we could foresee in the next 2 to 3 years?
Okay, got it. Okay, so videos playing a big role here. Everywhere I go, what in terms of consuming the educating the user what the product is about. The second is what the product is about. Right. So that's one thing. Vernacular is another positive sense, right? Vernacular influencer content, that's awesome. That's something right. A lot of content coming in from their works. Now again, it's a call that you have to take, right? You don't create an Instagram reel for your content using an influencer which will have an insane reach immediately, or do you want to create persistent content which will be there and be searchable for a long time, right? So I would love to do both, right? But there's only so much time and money that you can do. So you need to figure out where you want to focus your energies on, right? Other than that, a lot of new marketplaces are focusing on very different audiences, right? Which one will be the winner or how it's going to pan out is anyone's guess. But my suggestion is to latch onto the new marketplaces also to figure out, where you can access new audiences. And these marketplaces are so okay. So that's an interesting thing. But other than that, the way
I think you have some network issues.
I think some technical issue. I think once, at least we'll give it a second. I think
for a person launch D2C.
I think we lost you there. Meanwhile, for all our participants, I've also shared a link to Global Beast newsletter in the comments. It's a very useful and insightful newsletter by Global Beast regularly. Daman has his personal blog as well. Maybe we can share that as well, which has some interesting news.
So I'll just put it on the chat for everyone right now.
Yeah. So I think while we wait, love to hear from the audience as well in terms of your favorite D2C brands which you're seeing stand out in the market. Love to hear in the comments as well if you can put it. You can see which are brands which we are starting to replace in our wardrobes or in our restrooms. GT boat, yeah, that's great. I only buy boat now too. Any other brands? Urban Monkey, Saurabh, very interesting. Chumbak. Hi, Daman.
Yeah, Daman's back. Small technical issue we just faced right now.
Noise. Yeah.
Sorry guys, got dropped off.
No problem, Daman. We were discussing the newsletter and also some of our favorite D2C brands while we were waiting for you. So both is there in quite a bit. And so not needle theory, yes.
Needle theory. That's an interesting one.
So I think, Daman, we had some questions actually while you were not here. I think while you were just trying to join in back. So I think some people had few questions. I think one question came in from the audience, which they wanted to also know that basically how should founders or co-founders plan their products or SKU mix to kind of manage their overall average order value? But I think that's something which a lot of brands are not able to figure out in the right way, that how do we keep increasing our AOV from time to time? So what would your advice be to the co-founders here?
I'll give you a ton of ideas on that, on how to increase your AOV. The most difficult ones are launch more expensive SKUs, right? Which people would love to buy. The second is bundling, right? Create bundles in your portfolio, right? See what stuff people buy. See what repeat buyers are usually buying. What kind of stuff that they are pairing things with. Do that. Third is partner with another brand and do bundling with them, right? And see what's happening over there. Fourth is give bulk discounts. For example, buy two get 15%, buy three get 40%, so on and so forth. So there's a ton of these ideas that you can try on, okay, and see what's working for your particular brand and in your particular area, right? Run all of these as a set of experiments and see what sticks on the wall here, and you'll be able to figure out how to increase your AOV.
Sure. Thank you so much, Daman. And I think before we just wrap up, I think any advice that you would like to give any of the D2C marketers or the founders sitting out here who are planning to, I think, either start out something new or they're already currently in their journey of building or trying to solve a problem for our nation right now? Any advice that you would like to give?
I'll share some personal insights. So every time I've started working with a D2C brand, there comes a time in the brand that सब कुछ फट जाता है, to put it very crudely, right? Things really, a lot of things implode. The aim of the entrepreneur here is to live through that and correct, because what happens is when you're scaling up your supply chain, your manufacturing, or your front end engine, a lot of these things will break, and sometimes a lot of these things will break more or less next to each other, and you think it's all doomed. No, that's not doomed. That's the sign of the market telling you, things are working. Now we got to fix the rest of the things which we did not focus on early in the day. So hang in there, live through those first initial 2 or 3 troughs, and you are home.
I think one last question, Daman, before we let you go, is a lot of brands have this bottom line in mind, but also want to scale the top line, right? And during the journey, how do you see that balance happening? Should the brand invest in brand building and let the profitability dip during a period because that growth will show up later? How do you see that, especially with exits happening now and Global Bees acquiring brands?
So let me redefine this, right? I mean, we see growth in 2 ways. Either you're growing your top line or you're growing your bottom line, right? Growing both of them simultaneously is very rare. So these things move in tandem, right? And if your top line is not growing and you're growing your bottom line, you're doing the right thing, right? And D2C is such an industry where the range in which you can sell to the user, your COGS. Okay, it's not going to, COGS are going to change by 100%. I'm sure you've done your homework on that. So what kind of remains in the middle is your marketplace commissions and your marketing costs to play with, right? And that will kind of define your profitability at the end of the day. And because today the whole value chain for D2C is so modularized, you do not need to overinvest so much in tech, because there are platforms like Shopify, Shoptimize, and all that kind of stuff, right? Your heavy lifting, no pun intended, in warehousing, in shipping, is being handled by the likes of ShipRocket and InCrev and all those guys. So you can focus entirely on the product and get things going. If you had to start a D2C company probably 6-7 years ago, you'd have to invest in a huge warehouse. You have to invest in figuring out last mile delivery. All those things are sorted out right now. Okay. It's now time for you to just figure out the unit economics and go with it. And this is not like a digital startup, where you say, my gross margins are going to be 90% 2 years down the line. This is not that kind of stuff. This is a very plain Jane business wherein you create a good product at articulate value and the users buy you because they love it.
No, I think the Danda meets scale. I think that's what the new D2C world is to a large extent. But and I think one personal question, Naman, where do you get all the energy? I think we've worked together for 3-4 years now. What's the secret?
Well, I'm actually very fortunate, to be in this space. And I mean, I'm pretty passionate about this place, right? For me, it is never work, right? I love coming to my office. I love building a team wherein we love to solve problems, run hundreds of experiments, learn, fail, develop playbooks. I mean, we've been doing that with you for, nearly 2 years now. I think that's something which I feel, enjoyable. We're practically writing the book on how to, scale up companies. So I think that's something which we all will, those are memories we'll take away, and that's what keeps me alive.
I completely agree, Raman, and I think you make, I think, every discussion, like even tough challenges, something where we are doing things together, and it's not, I think you take your team along as well. We've seen that across both and at Global Bees. So great to have leaders like you in the industry, and I'm sure Global Bees will continue its journey towards more scale and value. And
thanks for having me here. And before I leave, I'll just do a shameless plug of our newsletter for D2C players. I mean, do subscribe to it. We give a lot of growth tips over here. Stuff which inspires us, we actually put it over there for everyone.
Superb newsletter, fantastic. I read it.
Thanks, yeah.
Hey, Arjun.
Hey, Arjun. Thanks.
I think I'll do connect anyway offline as well. So great to have you all connect on this forum, and a warm welcome to you, Arjun, as well, to the D2C Summit. Thank you, Daman. I really appreciate it. Have a good day, and we'll catch up soon. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tej, as well. Hi, Arjun. Warm welcome to you. And
hey, guys.
Meghna, are you there? You wanna? Yes. I think Meghna's gonna.
Hey, hi, Arjun.
Hey, Meghna. What's up?
Good. How you been?
Very well.
Awesome. Super.
D2 scale. So the logo is out.
Yes, it is very much.
Yes, yeah. Thanks for all your inputs Arjun, over the last few weeks as well.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I think so exciting to have you because you've done the entire journey from starting up, exiting, and now an investor. So I think a lot of us have a lot of questions for you. I don't know if you'll be able to fit it all in 30 minutes, but yes, Meghna, over to you.
Yeah, no, I think I'll probably just quickly start with an introduction, Arjun, before we dive into the questions and direct to scale. For everyone here today, Arjun is the founder and, of course, ex-CEO of Dr. Vaidya's, an Ayurvedic brand that has revolutionized the Ayurvedic space in India very, very clearly. He's taken on the legacy of 150 years of Ayurveda from his grandfather before sort of starting the D2C side of Dr. Vaidya's in 2016, and of course has grown it along with a great team and Trisha as well for it to become one of the biggest exits the industry has seen. Very recently, Dr. Vaidya's got acquired by one of the biggest corporate groups in India, and Arjun, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on board today. Like Sunil mentioned, a lot of questions we are all going to have. Of course, but yes, I think.
Thank you so much for having me, and yeah, I'm excited to be a part of this conversation and happy to see D2 scale come to life. Also, very exciting.
Yeah, I think that was a name we were in fact contemplating over a period of time, but yeah, I think it's hopefully a lot to scale, definitely. But Arjun, I think honestly, the very, very first question that comes to my mind, and we'll take a few from the audience as well as we go. The question here is basically, we've seen so many startups get funded over the last, especially 2 years in this industry. D2C and otherwise, right? Both sides of it. But what is that one piece of advice you'd like to give founders who are just starting off? Like, I think should you really start off with the thought process of getting funded or moving to an exit stage? What is that idea that you'd like to put out there for everyone?
So that's actually the exact opposite of the advice I will give you. Don't start a company to get funded, to become a unicorn, to get featured in X newspaper, Y newspaper, get featured on X list or Y list. That's totally irrelevant to your journey. Start a business to solve a problem, right? And I think everything else will follow as it follows. A lot of people come to me and say, hey, you exited Dr. Vaidya's, we want to exit like you. Had I decided to exit Dr. Vaidya's when I started, I'd never been able to exit, right? So I think fundamentally build a business to solve a problem, right? So when we teach our D2C cohort as well, I say to ask yourself 3 questions as to why you're running a business. The first is, what's the problem? The second is, what's the solution or what's my solution? And the third is, why am I best placed to have the solution to this problem, right? Because there are problems which have solutions. Like for example, there's a lot of traffic on the road. The solution is a flying car, but I'm not placed well enough to build that flying car, right? So, I mean, I'm not the one who's going to solve that problem. So I think that's what I would say from a sort of step back perspective. Now, a little bit more from a founder journey as well. I think 3 things I learned in my journey, which I didn't do enough as I started, and I learned through time. Number 1 is, it's like right now there's euphoria in relation to startups, right? Unicorns, funding, acquisitions, exits, Daman buying hundreds of businesses, etc., all of that. But the reality is that the journey is actually a roller coaster. And so what you read in the newspaper is only the positive. But you have to be able to fight failure with grit and resilience. Second thing is, I was a young founder. When I started, I was 24 and a half. And so I under-indexed on team, thinking I can solve everything myself. You can only compound a business if you have a strong team that's enabled and empowered. And the third thing is, startups are not hobbies. Like you cannot, my podcast is a hobby, right? But my business was never a side project, side hustle, which when it scaled, I would leave this and go to that. And so I think you can't be slightly pregnant with a venture. You're either in or out. It's okay to be out, but if you're in, you got to be 100% in.
What was some of the thoughts that you went through when you all sort of started Dr. Vaidya's, of course, initially? Like, what were some of the hurdles that you all faced very early on in the journey?
So I put a LinkedIn post about this actually, I think last week, some point, right? It takes a while to hit inflection point, but when you hit inflection point, it's a crazy ride. Like it's hockey stick growth, right? And so you don't know how long it'll take to reach that inflection point. For us, it took 2 years to figure out what our scalable business model is. Like our D2C website, it took us 1 year of failing offline and 1 year of learning online to get to 50 orders a day. Everyone knows the Dr. Vaidya story of 5,000 orders a day, but no one was there when we were in 2017 doing 1 order every 3 days, and people were saying, hey, you're wasting your time on this, join your father's business. What are you doing this stuff for, right? So I think that's the biggest hurdle, like establishing a brand in the large country that we have. Look, everyone talks about the opportunity, 100 billion opportunity, 1.4 billion customers, 900 million smartphone users in India, etc., all of that. But look, there's that much clutter as well, right? And there's that many brands as well. So to cut through the clutter and to win in that space, it takes time, effort, energy, but a lot of patience. Like today, like I remember a time when I was like, we used to get every order notification on our email, every single order notification. And I would dream one day, like my email will be so flooded that I won't be able to read my email because we'll be getting so many orders. It took ages for that to happen, like a really, really long time. When it happened, it was amazing, right? But it took a while for that.
Yeah, of course. I think for smaller startups, also just hearing that Shopify bell on your phone every time you get an order is a very, very big deal. So
yeah, exactly. We'd celebrate one order.
Yeah.
One order. I remember once LBB posted about Live It Up. I think this was 2017 or 2018. That day we got 30 orders. And we were like, wow, it's a game changer. We should tell LBB to post every day.
Right. Yeah, no, I think just thinking of that also, and I think we've sort of been a small part of the journey of Dr. Vaidya's as well. But even ever since, 2018, ever since we've connected, right before that, 2016, when you all started, till date, how much do you think the D2C space has evolved? Like today, there are so many brands in this space. Would you say that, a pro, or how would you sort of picture that?
Yeah, so look, the advantage that we had in 2016 was if you came online to buy Ayurveda, you'd buy Dr. Vedya's because there was nobody else. In 2017, we didn't do online in 2016. 2017 when we launched in November. From then on, for the first year, like there was only one brand, Dr. Vedya's, was solely focused online. So if you came online, you bought us. But to convince you, Meghna, to come online and buy Ayurveda was a big task, right? So we spent a lot of time convincing the customer. When they got convinced, they came to buy us. Today, there are 10x, 15x the number of customers that there were in 2016, 2017 who will buy from D2C websites, right? Amazon marketplace platform customers, there were a lot. There are more now, but there were a lot. But D2C websites should build that trust to say, hey, will this guy even deliver the order? Like, there's no chance he delivers, so I'm not going to buy from him. That's changed, right? And so I think from that perspective, there is a lot more customers. But let's say, even if we say there are 100x the number of customers, just assuming a random number, there are also 10, 15x the number of brands. So if you were the only brand getting 15 rupees in sale, today there is 100 rupees of sale available, which is 7-8 times. But there are 15, 20 brands catering to that. And so if you take an average, you're getting 5 rupees in sale instead of 15. But if you win, you'll get 50 bucks because earlier there was only 15 bucks available. Now there's 50 bucks available. So we took 1 year to learn. You have 8 to 12 weeks to learn in terms of your basics, right? What's a website? What platform do you put your website on? How do you build your brand? Conversion rate optimization, Facebook, Google advertising, retargeting your customers, retention, supply chain ops, logistics, post-order experience, all of these things. You have 8 to 12 weeks to learn because if you don't learn in time, there is someone who will do it much better than you, much faster.
Correct. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's so many brands out there, but that sort of, I think probably people need to know what do they need to do differently for their brand to be the one that's winning. So there can be 20 brands who are still selling the same products in the personal care space. What do you think sort of helps one brand stand out from everyone else in that platform?
Today, as much as you want to work on it, performance marketing is the easiest answer to any question, and anyone can do it, right? And so the amount of people going on the platforms and using performance marketing has made the CPM and the CAC increase to a level where it's unsustainable.
Correct.
So what helps you win and get the ROI? And we discussed this so much, right? And at that time when we were doing it also, it's okay not to do so much. But today, without brand, community, and top of the funnel, you will die.
Yeah.
You literally die as a brand, right? Because there's so much clutter. And so to build a strong community, to build an engaged community, and to build a strong brand, that is critical. Just critical.
Correct. And for Dr. Vedya's also, and in fact, all the brands that you're currently investing in, as well as we speak, when you think of branding, right, still a lot of brands are very averse to it. People don't think that branding sort of helps build your search volumes, build your brand search overall itself, right? Because performance marketing, like you said, can only help to a particular extent. What is, that one piece or maybe an experience you would like to share, even in terms of numbers from your experience in investing in brands or Dr. Vedya's itself?
Look, I think in investing in brands, I have one philosophy in D2C: sales solves everything. So I have a podcast on D2C. In the first episode I recorded with Rohan Mirchandani, he said one thing which has stuck with me. He said, if customers take out rupees from their wallet and buy your product, that is when that's your moment of truth, right? And like, we philosophize a lot. We do a lot of FGDs, focus group discussions, product trials, sampling, testing, market research. But then the moment of truth is when the customer spends the money. And then he corrected himself that we are all good salespeople. So I can convince you, Meghna, to buy one of my products, you'll buy it. Because I'm sitting in the same room as you, I'm telling you I'm selling all of that, whatever, right? So I consider myself, I'm a good salesperson. But then, without me saying it, Meghna takes out money from a wallet the second time and buys the brand. That is key. And that is when a brand is really successful and not successful. And so I believe, for me, at least as an investor, sales solves everything in D2C.
Got it. But you're saying basically long-term retention is sort of your LTV of customer retention is what
we are running a business with a P&L, right? Like, everyone talks about all these consumer tech businesses burning a lot of money, etc. All of that. A D2C business is a normal FMCG business with a P&L. There is a average order value. There is a gross margin. There is a customer acquisition cost, logistics cost, and packaging / miscellaneous cost. At the end of that, you cannot be negative forever, right? And so that CM2, contribution margin that we talk about, fundamentally it has to be positive. And so like, this is not a business you burn money through the rest of your life. This is a business which fundamentally is a normal old school business. Fine, you may burn money for a little bit of time, etc. But the P&L has to look like a normal business P&L.
Correct.
It's not one of those that I'm acquiring users, I don't mind the price, I'm acquiring users, I'll keep acquiring. And what's exciting about D2C and the secret sauce of D2C is today you pay a customer acquisition cost to acquire the customer. But with D2C, you get rich data which you don't get with offline businesses. You get name, address, phone number, email address, and what product they bought. At least these five data points you get, right? And so you can cross-sell, upsell, and resell to this customer without anybody in between. And that's when you unlock your power, right? So if a customer comes back 3, 4, 5 times, you're making serious money from that customer.
Correct.
Even if you break even the first time.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think from a retention perspective, are there like certain points you'd like to share with a lot of companies in the D2C space? I think a lot of, in fact, clients that we work with also focus on new user acquisition. Like you said, your LTV, your retention is what will sort of help that P&L actually move into a profit. So I think, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think very good question. Look, Meghna, I think like it's non-negotiable to do retention, because like if you're not doing it, then you're leaving money on the table. It's a customer who's bought your product, who's paid money, who's using your product, and you are not engaging with them again. So you cannot not do retention. I also see a lot of early stage brands use only email as retention. Look, my customer didn't even read email. Today, I don't have time to read my Gmail because I'm just spammed by brands. So I don't even read it.
Yeah.
So what are the other ways to engage with the customer? Email is one, but also push notification, SMS, WhatsApp, and call. And if you say I'm only doing email because my customer doesn't like getting a call, I thought my customer didn't like getting a call. I got 7x ROI on my calls at Dr. Wes because my customer didn't like an email. He or she wanted a call. And so to be able to do retention integrated across channels, when my wife's lenses run out, I buy her lenses every month. Lenskart doesn't let me forget that the lenses have run out. WhatsApp, email, SMS, push notification, call, sab kuch aata hai. And as long as they do the call in the right, polite way, I actually don't feel bad when Lenskart calls once a month.
Yeah.
I hate it when the banks call for loans. I actually don't mind Lenskart calling. When Lenskart sends that email saying relationship status committed, I actually like smile when I get that email, right? So there's a right way to do it, and you have to crack that.
Got it. Yeah, I think some brands have cracked it. Like probably a Swiggy, Zomato. We've seen like the works of everything, all the push notifications they send. It's very, very interesting. I think also one more thing brands are doing, I don't think it falls under retention directly, but a lot of brands have quizzes. And I think Dr. Vaidya's itself had a doctor consultation, of course. But if you see a Man Matters, if you see a Bare Anatomy, or if you see a newer brand, Traya, they all have quizzes on their website. Does that sort of also help? Is that where you see the space moving into customized format of products for people? Is that what they're looking for?
Look, those are very specific use cases for quizzes, right? They want to, it's like our dosha test on the Dr. Vaidya's website. We want to get to know something about you to sell your product. But I don't think it works for all kinds of brands. It specifically works for personalized products or like long-term products where you need a consult. But otherwise, like I'm not doing a quiz to buy boat. And I'm not doing a quiz to buy Sleepy Owl. And I'm not doing a quiz to buy Whole Truth. And I'm not doing a quiz to buy Zimrat or Neiman's, right? So it depends on what the customer journey really is.
Got it. On another totally different angle, when you think of D2C, of course, we're thinking of building websites for brands, right? So key is to build your own website, direct sales on your website. But what about marketplaces? What is that split? Do you see it skewed towards marketplaces still? Will that continue to be the trend even in the future? Or will the website be key for all brands?
I say, don't decide, let your customer decide. There are certain categories customers buy on a brand website. There are certain categories customers more prefer on a marketplace.
Right. Digital
business, online business gives you data that tells you what the customer likes. So if your ROS is higher on marketplaces and your sales velocity is higher, the customer is telling you, hey, I don't want to buy on your website, I want to buy here. Does that mean you don't have a website? No, you always have a website. It's non-negotiable to not have both channels today. And it's so easy to launch, right? Like you have plug and play tools and solutions available, as Daman was saying. So It's not negotiable to have both, but let your customer decide and let the data tell you the answer to the question.
Got it. Sure. Yeah, I think we've seen, obviously we've seen marketplace drive like really, really high. ROAS, of course, makes more sense, I think, in terms of numbers as well. But in terms of your website, I think if you sort of built it right with the right kind of platform, I think, of course, then works the best for the brand itself, right? Because you're making...
You know pros and cons of both, right? The marketplace has traffic. You have to bring traffic to your website. The marketplace won't give you data. They'll keep the data. On your website, you'll get all the data. So there are pros and cons, right. But you have to know what the pros and cons are when you get into it.
Got it. That having been like online, what are your thoughts on offline? Do you think, so retail is anyway going to be a part of our everyday lives. It's not like retail is going to shut down. Some brands, and a lot of brands, I think, for example, Sugar's opened so many offline retail stores, right? So keeping brands like that in mind, what is your take on online versus offline?
This is the biggest conversation happening in the D2C space now, right? Because everyone's like, oh, CACs are up, CPM is up. So now I'm reading tweets about people saying, hey, this D2C is all just like, it's just vanity and the real businesses are being built offline. Look, I'll tell you the reality, right? The reality is that I started offline and I failed miserably. Why did I fail miserably? If you're an early stage brand in offline, you're up against really, really large businesses that have really, really large resources. Offline is not direct sale, right? So you are a brand, you sell to a super stockist or a super distributor or a CNF, they sell to a distributor who sells to a retailer who sends to the customer, and then you get paid. And so I actually didn't get paid for 3 months, and then 3 months later, I got 90% of my product returned, right? And why does this happen? Because it takes a lot to generate offtake on the retail shelves, right? Because there's very little discovery consumption done in India. Other than a food hall and an HR's basket and some of these bigger large format stores, you don't go and discover at a chemist shop. You don't go and browse at a chemist shop. You go and like with a prescription, or you go and ask for what's available and you move on from there, right? And so your brand has to generate pull. If you don't generate pull, you pay large listing fees, slotting fees, marketing fees, or visibility fees.
Yeah.
Plus you have to operate an offline sales force, right? So I had 22 sales reps in Bombay and I just started my business. And so I failed miserably because I couldn't generate offtake. I had no right to win. I had limited resources and my product came return.
Correct.
Had I done it now, when Dr. Wellness is so well known, it would have actually generated great offtake because there were retailers calling me when I reached 1,000, 2,000 orders a day saying, people are asking for a product, can you give it to us? Then at that stage, you have the negotiating leverage to negotiate the terms of trade with the offline retail channel. If you don't have that and you're an early stage brand, unless you're a really good operator who knows the space really, really well, and we're seeing that example with Jimmy's Cocktails, right? It's largely an offline brand, but they are savvy operators and so they figured it out. Unless you're really, really good, you will spend a lot of cost and you'll struggle, right? So that's my view on the way offline navigation should happen. Having said that, if you reach the stage of a mid-level or large level D2C brand, demand is already coming. And so you go to the store and you say, I'll not pay you 35% margin, I'll pay you 30% margin. No listing fees, you want my product, take it. And in that situation, when customers are asking for it, they will take it.
Got it. So basically you reach a certain level in order to be able to make offline work. That's the idea.
Until then, the D2C or online only operation is actually very capital efficient, right? Because you have a few warehouses, you have a central team, you have centralized stock. Maybe you put it in 3-4 warehouses, but it's not gone to like 5,000 stores.
Right. Just another question top of mind. So what about selling to other countries, right? We're talking about D2C in India right now. What about products, example, a Dr. Vedya's or a Sugar or a Sleepy Owl selling to different countries? What's your take on that?
So I don't have a take on that, but I asked the same question to Harsh Mariwal on my podcast. And he said that your product has to have a right to win. And so an Ayurveda, a chai, and Indian spices, Indian ethnic wear, specific handicraft products, you don't get them anywhere else in the world. And so we have a right to win there. If you're selling a lipstick or a health and wellness product that's non-Ayurvedic, you're up against people who are experts at it. And so unless you have a right to win or a unique differentiator in your product, it may be challenging in developed markets. Maybe, but I don't know the answer yet.
Got it. Yeah, Indian ethnic, yeah, like you said, Indian spices, anything Indian, authentically Indian.
That will win. That will win. The other products, you're up against people who are obviously
in the space.
have been there in that market for longer. So you have to find your right to win.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think Sunil, you want to step in?
Yeah, no, I have lots of questions for Arjun as well. I think Arjun, like you have obviously moved on from being a founder of a D2C company now to investor at Berlin Invest. Looking back, like, as an investor lens, did you miss out on some points as a founder, which now
Yeah,
you've
lots of
learned?
things.
So,
Lots of things.
like, what are the top 2-3, which founders should be aware of?
Yeah, I'll tell you, look, I didn't invest in brand early enough, started that too late in my journey. Had I known better, I would have done differently. Number two, didn't invest in retention early enough, which is why I say it's non-negotiable. It's pretty scientific, actually, if you get down to it. And so I learned retention only in 2019, 2020, scientifically, the way I know it today, right? So that's number two. And number three, as I said, I think we didn't invest in team early enough.
Sure. Do you want to elaborate a bit on two? Like, very interesting, retention, scientifically, how should...
You have to have a flow, right? Like, let's say, for example, a customer abandons a cart. We were random. We would call the customer some days, not call the customer some days. Then when we built a flow, it was like, okay, customer abandons cart. You have to WhatsApp the customer within 15 minutes automatically. Then email the customer within 1 hour. If they don't reply, 6 hours later, you give them a discount code. 12 hours later, you give them a higher discount code. Then you SMS. Then you send a push notification. Then you call. And then 2 days later, you call again. That flow, scientifically foolproof structure, needs to be there across cross-sell, upsell, resell, abandoned cart. It's scientific. We didn't know that, right? And I think all of these things now, like everyone knows it now because D2C has evolved in India. We were like reading case studies in the US, trying to learn, use tools, etc. All of that. So things are now much more developed than they were then.
I think still like a lot of teams are not using marketing automation, right? Are there some like best tools which you have found, Arjun, which you recommend?
Yeah, look, I think there are multiple tools, right? Web Engage, Mo Engage, Wixo, Clever Tap, Notify Visitors. Like, you got to find what works for you, but all of these tools will solve for this. You have to put the effort yourself to build the flows, etc. All of that. The logic on how a customer will behave, nobody can teach. You have to know that yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as we were starting D2Scale, we did a survey of like founders and teams, and very few are today using marketing automation. It's like emailers, but that automation for different users.
Before this, I was on call with the founder. She's like, yeah, I have a 40% open rate on my emails. I do nothing else. Yeah. I said, well, look at that. That's potential for you, right?
No, absolutely, Arjun. I think the other area was on the creator economy, right? You've seen, we've been discussing offline a bit on that. Do you see that like become a key part of brand building and like performance as well going forward for D2C brands?
What's the challenge today? The challenge today is that CPMs and CACs are very high. And so if you use the Facebook and Google audience only, which everybody else is using, you'll pay that CAC. And so what's the way to be able to not pay that CAC is to be able to build an engaged community, use the power of thought leaders, and also have high retention. These are the only ways for you to get rid or stay away from this high CAC. So you have to do all of it.
I think like a lot of brands, like especially in the beauty space, have started now using creators both for top funnel and performance. Any best practices there? Is it being overdone?
I've seen that like you have to look at the data, right? So like if you use, I see a lot of brands say, hey, I want to do 500 influencers, micro influencers on barter. Okay, but what happened with that 500? You got 500 stories to put on your account and so you felt good about yourself? Not relevant, right? So yeah, I used X influencer. This is the reach I got. This is the engagement I got. This is the website clicks I got. This is the conversions I got. Should I go back to the influencer or not? Put a hypothesis, see the data, and then go back. We're running an online business. It's scientific, right? So I think that's how to think about it.
No, absolutely. I think with influencer.in, not a plug, but I think like that's kind of the problem we're trying to solve, because even if you work with like say 500 creators for your next campaign, which are the creators which you should be working with and which should you drop, right? So that science, not most brands are not deploying it today at scale. I think on the international part, Arjun, like you are mentioning on, the Indian-centric brands like Ayurvedas or the teas have an opportunity over there. From a market research perspective, for founders who are looking to expand internationally, how do you see that happening? You know, like consumer insights, both of those look like weak points in the Indian ecosystem. Love to hear.
I'm not so like when we teach our D2C cohort as well, like a lot of people say, hey, can I get access to this Red Seer report and this Euromonitor report and all? I'm like, go to Amazon, see the number of reviews, multiply them by 35 to 40, because on average, 1 in 35 to 40 consumers review. You know how much that product has sold. And you then, on every listing on Amazon, you see the launch date of the product. So you get a sense of how much revenue that product is doing. That will give you you multiply the top, you get the top 10 products in the space, their data, and then you're pretty much like, you know what's happening, right? So I would say use first party data or like easily available data to start your conversation. And obviously there are tools, right? If you're looking at research on the marketplace, Seller App, Jungle Scout, Helium 10, all these tools exist, right? So use them and they're free or almost free, freemium.
No, absolutely. Arjun. I think like a lot of founders are now getting more hands-on, and I think we have a young breed of entrepreneurs as well, right? Especially after Shark Tank 2. I think even before that, I think we're seeing that transformation in smart people starting B2C brands and being committed to a longer journey. Personally, for you, after exiting, how's your personal life been? As an investor now, and I know you're very active in the ecosystem, supporting many.
Not as stressful as being a founder, for sure. So, not as stressful.
Blood pressure is under control.
I see Ruchi on the session already. She has got so many panic calls from me. So, and so have you guys. So, no, I think not so stressful. But look, it's nice for us to give back, share our learnings. We're enjoying that. But yeah, I get to sleep at night.
Yeah. And how is it? I think like since you are doing this with your spouse as well, like any special moments?
There's a TED talk coming on this, hopefully this week. Because a lot of people have asked us this. No, it's an amazing journey for us. Look, I think it's not for everyone. It's a really immersive experience. You spend a lot of time together. But I wouldn't have done it any other way. So now we don't work together, and yeah, I miss it as well.
Right. No, definitely. I think it's great to see that. And obviously, it takes a special couple to make it happen. So it's you guys are. So thank you, Arjun. It's been amazing catching up with you. And as always, super high energy and contribution to the ecosystem as well. Really appreciate that.
Yeah, I think more than anything, just look up to the energy that you, Trisha, and the entire team had. I think I've said that before as well, but
I hope our energy is not gone though. I feel like it's not, but I hope it hasn't.
No.
I think it's spreading wider now. And so Bedias now you're like the D2C maker, in many ways. So definitely. Thank you, Arjun.
Thanks so much, Arjun. Thanks for joining us today. Thank you.
I think with that, let me welcome Ruchi. Hi, Ruchi.
Hi, Sunil.
Great to have you here.
Hi.
Hi, Arjun. I heard the point on panic calls, but yeah, I would love to get some of those.
Now there's nothing to panic about, right? What is there to
calls
panic?
Calls can remain.
Calls can remain. See you. Enjoy, guys.
See you.
Thank you, Arjun. Yeah, I think it's a small community of D2C leaders, and Ruchi, I think great to have you here. Warm welcome. Thanks for taking.
Thank you so much, Sunil.
No, absolutely. Charanya, over to you to initiate the discussion.
Hello, hi Ruchi. Great to have you here.
Hi, Charanya. Thank you for the warm welcome.
I speak to you almost every day, but it's great to have you here in a session where you can impart this interesting discussion to the rest of us as well. I think before we start the discussion, Ruchi, I'd like to take a few minutes to introduce you and the tremendous work that you've done in the space of marketing, sales, and business development to everybody here. Ruchi is currently the partner management lead Meta India. She comes with 12 plus years of experience in sales strategy, in e-com, digital advertising, general trade, and modern trade, which makes her an expert in everything to do with sales, be it market planning or building a go-to market strategy for brands across the country. We at Social Beat are fortunate to work with Ruchi and her team at Meta very closely and have had an opportunity to have many interesting discussions about scaling direct-to-consumer brands through Meta over the past few years. Again, great to have you here. Thanks for sparing some time to spend with us to share your strategic views on how to scale D2C brands with Meta. Thanks, Ruchi, and looking forward to the insightful discussion with you as always.
Thank you so much, Sharanya, Sunil, and the entire Social Beat team for such a warm welcome. And I did, of course, attend a couple of insights which Daman and Arjun just shared before me. So I'm just going to pick it up from there. And like Sharanya mentioned, I also come with an experience of working in general trade, modern trade, e-commerce across channels. So probably can provide a bit of view on how a direct to consumer strategy is here to stay and is a long term play versus a fad, which few years back it used to be perceived like a fad, but it is a long term bit and it's here to stay. So thank you once again. I do have a small presentation which I would love to walk all of us through, and at the end of the session, if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer those questions. So Sharanya, if I can take over and share my screen. Thank you. If you can confirm to me if my screen is visible.
Yes, it's visible.
Okay, so I'm actually going to start with a quick concept of how we at Meta look at direct to consumer, and I'll introduce you to a concept called discovery commerce, which we look at within the organization. So I'm here to talk about how do we enable direct to consumer journeys. And we're here to partner with you and help you on your D2C journey through our solutions, supported with our ecosystem partnerships and amazing agency partnerships like we have with Social Beat here. So jumping on to the concept I was talking about, which is discovery commerce. So all of us are well aware of e-commerce, where people find products. It's a direct to consumer channel where it's easier for consumers to find what they need. But what we want to do is something slightly more revolutionary, where we want products to find people. And I'm going to talk about this concept of how a lot of marketers and B2C brand owners can leverage this concept and help grow their business on our platforms. Before we do that, I do want to start with a mix of some success stories across Indian brands. So, and all of these names are no surprise to any one of us. Mama Earth, which entered the Unicorn Club in this year, is a purely started off as a purely D2C brand, and only when they had some set of pure online presence is when they are venturing into other spaces. On the other hand, if you see the second example, which is ITC Store, ITC is known to be having the best distribution network across the country because of its cigarette sales, when it started way back about 3 decades back. At this point in time, even an organization like that, owing to the consumer shift, also realized the need of a direct to consumer channel and launched its own ITC store. And we all can see the results which the store saw in terms of not only purchases, but also the kind of returns the brand saw on our platform. And the third example is Wow Skin Science India, which again leveraged a strategy of hybrid, which is online and offline, and leveraged our tools and solutions to grow their business on our platform. So these are some of the examples of brands and portfolios at different stages, and how much e-commerce was as a part of their overall sales. Which brings me to a framework we've kind of crafted to address what are the product solutions and the needs for brands at different stages of their journey. So we classify these as 4 segments. The first one really is nascent, where digital as a percentage of overall sales is less than 5%, to consequential, which is where it gets to about 8 to 10%, to significant, where it is still under 50%, and evolved is where the majority of sales comes from digital as a medium. Now, let's look at what are the needs of different brands at these stages of evolution. So during the first stage and the second stage, and I'm going to club these two together because the needs are pretty much going to be similar. What the need is to really incubate a D2C channel, because that's a channel which is missing in the overall go-to market for these brands. How can they do that? They can leverage traditional channels, inputs, insights from traditional and offline channels to actually build their D2C. So for example, brands like ITC, when they would have started building the ITC store, this was the segment they were in. And they leveraged a lot of data from their traditional channels, their offline CRMs, their data from their consumers, from their offline channels, and kind of brought all of those insights together to incubate a D2C platform. What do brands need at this stage of evolution is really twofold. One, technical and startup skills, because this is purely based on technology, right? So how do you really build those skills? How do you build those platforms to ensure your D2C channel is up and running? And second, because in direct to consumer channel, the fulfillment and reverse logistics will not be same as your offline channel. So there has to be a separate fulfillment operations which need to be set up for direct to consumers. And Arjun, who spoke some time back, Arjun and I had multiple conversations on how they have set up their fulfillment and reverse logistics for Dr. Vedya's to ensure that their direct to consumer is also profitable. So it's very, very important for brands at this stage to ensure that their fulfillment and reverse logistics are set up at the right pace. When digital becomes a significant part of their brands, then there are twofold strategy every brand will need to follow. One, which are the visitors which are non-store visitors, so they don't touch their offline visitors so much, but they really look at customer acquisition. So which are the customers which they can acquire which don't visit their stores? And second, for customers who visit their stores, what categories and products they are still not buying? So it's a combination of new customer acquisition and portfolio expansion or basket expansion of existing customers which brands follow. And for being successful at this stage of your business, they need to be very, very efficient on omni-channel strategy. So they need to be very, very clear on what is their role of each go-to-market channel, what is their scale and acquisition efficiency across channels, and have the right mix for the right portfolio of the products. And when a brand has reached evolved stage, which is more than 50% to close to 90% of the business is coming from digital, the idea is to continue to drive repeat purchase and build loyalty. And also, as they build their new product lines, try to remarket that to their early adopters so that they can continue to become their advocates and their flywheel kind of continues. At this stage, it is, again, logistics continues to play an important role, but payments also becomes an equally important lever to drive to ensure that business runs in a very, continued fashion and there are no disruptions. So that's really how we look at businesses at different stages of evolution and what do businesses need at each of these stages. Now, really bringing the concept of discovery commerce, how do you activate discovery commerce? I think the first step is just personalization engine. So how do you personalize your business to maximize the value? The second bit is how do you inspire your audience by building engaging services? And you can do that by ensuring that you continue to innovate with creative formats and creative services. The third step is how do you convert and retain your customers or audiences which are visiting your platforms? So how do you optimize the paths you create to serve your objectives? And last but not the least, how do you continue to optimize to ensure efficiency and measure the impact so that you can continue to refine your advertising and conversion strategy? So that really is how we define discovery commerce, because it's an end-to-end solution to drive demand for businesses. And again, as I said, it matches products to people. I'll kind of segue into an example of how do we recommend driving commerce with WhatsApp, because again, that's a very, very key element of how do you connect with your end consumer, right? And we talk about 3 entry points by leveraging proactive communication on WhatsApp. I think the first one is click to WhatsApp ads. So when you do your ads on Instagram and Facebook, the call to action there is click to WhatsApp. So we can run click to WhatsApp ads. The second one is on all your offline and online assets have QR codes so that you can continue to have constant communication on WhatsApp. And the last one is through APIs, list messages, buttons, and multi-product messages, which is largely for through the WhatsApp Business API product. And through these powerful entry points, what you can do is actually attain all of these 5 objectives which your brand really needs. You can acquire new customers and leads, because through your ads on IG and FB, your WhatsApp ads really, you literally get in touch with the customer, so you kind of get a lead. You can continue to communicate offers to help drive conversion. You can cross-sell other products. So you can see that right from acquisition to conversion to final sale to customer relationship management, our platform really provides you an avenue to have a consumer end-to-end journey covered through WhatsApp. This is one very, very strong example of how we can leverage commerce through power of our products and solutions. Now, moving on to an additional bit which Meta continues to do is to ensure that we leverage our third-party ecosystem. So while we have our products and solutions to enable D2C journey, but we are also additionally doing is to partnering with third-party service providers to ensure that all the D2C brands scale up to the best possible potential they have. I'm going to break down this value chain into 3 parts. The first one being creating and managing an online store. The second one being operations of transactions and payments. And the third one is fulfillment and customer management. And across all of these 3 stages of value chain of which a D2C brand goes through, we have partners aligned across all of these. So for managing online store, there are 2 key problems, which brands face. One is how do they really create a website with catalog? And second, how do they continue to drive quality traffic to the website? So these are 2 key problems which we hear from a lot of D2C brands like you. And across both of these, we have third-party ecosystem, which enables cataloging and website creation, as well as integrations for marketing and sales. Similarly, on stage 2, which is payments and transactions, accepting orders, managing multi-channel orders, and accepting payments, we do have third-party providers who work on order management systems and provide payment solutions. Similarly, for fulfillment and customer relationship management, we have partners who provide logistic solutions and CRM solutions. So while we have the power of our products and solutions to help you in the journey, but to manage all that is needed to succeed, we also have a third-party ecosystem we work very, very closely with. So, if I just look at this flywheel on the slide, and I want you to focus on the right side, which is your business, we want to focus on that. The starting point really is building the creative, continuing to refine customer experiences. Then you activate your plan on our platform. Our platform and our discovery commerce system finds the right people for you, delivers the right creative, measures the efforts, analyzes the results, and continues to optimize and plan and give input to your creative. So this flywheel and what we really do is our discovery commerce system helps continuously move your business flywheel to ensure that you're delivering the outcomes as per your business objectives. So this is really a summary slide where I do want to talk about how Meta as a platform can support you on your commerce journey. I think the first step is helping you implement the fundamentals. So whether it is setting up signals hygiene, or it is helping you find the right audience, or it is helping you automate some of your processes and mechanisms so that your campaign management becomes more efficient, to even slightly more sophisticated optimization techniques, as well as helping you continuously innovate on creative formats, we help you implement the fundamentals. Step 2, we continue to enable you to activate commerce solutions. We all are aware of the globally available shopping surfaces, which I'm hoping we should soon have in India. We continue to enable you on the conversational commerce journey through our click to messenger, click to WhatsApp, which we spoke at length some time back. And we have a whole suite of ads which continue to serve differentiated needs basis your business objectives, whether it is collaborative ads or it is branded content ads, depending on what is the business objective you want to drive. And last but not the least, across all of this, we help you test and scale your journey. Whether you want to test your website and app setup, or you want to understand the LTV and bid accordingly, or you want to test a new creative format, or you want to test how does your cross-border strategy work, or really helping you build a direct-to-consumer channel if you have an offline channel existing. We continue to help you test and scale your strategy and become true partners in ensuring that your D2C journey is successful. How are we also able to do that? Always on measurement strategy. So whatever changes we do, there is a way for us to track what is the outcome of the changes we've made. So, that's it from my end on how you can partner with Meta to enable your direct-to-consumer brand success. Back to you, Sharanya, Sunil.
Thank you so much, Ruchi. I think there was a lot of areas covered in such short period of time. Thanks for this really insightful session. I think I had a follow-up question to some of the things that you showed us, right? And you, even when we've collaborated with you, I think we've always got an end-to-end solutioning partner from you, be it in any area that the D2C customer has come to us for, right? But my question is regarding the stages that you showed that a brand falls into, which is from nascent to evolved that you said. And you took the example of ITC store, which is otherwise a very evolved brand, right? Which is, you also mentioned they have a very good, their supply chain is great, and they're well established offline. So for a brand like that, you place them somewhere earlier in the earlier stages of evolution, which is based on how much they're spending on digital. So is it still important for a brand like that to test and learn, and also sort of put efforts behind brand building on digital platforms like Meta?
Sure. Thank you so much for that question. It's an interesting question, and I'm going to say yes, because I come from a CPG background, and I understand how that channel operates. The power of that channel is actually distribution. So a lot of brands in that price segment sell because of distribution, and when you come on an online platform, there is literally no distribution cost you have, right? Like, everyone is equal. So I do believe, while ITC is a big brand, but because it's a house of brand, and not everyone might be aware that an Ashirvad is an ITC product, for example, right? Because people might be aware of umbrella brand, but might not be aware of sub brands under the umbrella brand. And hence, our recommendation to any brand is, while in the D2C space, performance marketing sounds the most lucrative because it has a direct ROAS impact, and you can see you spend 10 rupees and you got sales worth 100 rupees, but at the end of it, the funnel continues to narrow down because the clutter on the number of brands being present is also higher. A physical store will only have those many products in the store, so the choices consumer have will always be limited. So sometimes brand spends is not only about brand building, but also to ensure top of mind recall as consumers are buying those products. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does, because we are always tackling between a well-known brand and a new brand that is in the D2C offering space. So wanted to sort of ask you, how do you look at those two brands together? I think my second question was to do with the testing and learning part that you mentioned when it comes to creativity. And I think Meta is a platform that has always been about testing and then learning, right? And I think that there are a lot of offerings that you have that help make it easier for brands to test when it comes to creative strategies. Would you probably take some time to give us some examples of how brands have sort of worked with you closely in leveraging these offerings that you have, which are from a very creative and testing and learning standpoint?
Oh, so there are a whole lot of examples of how brands have leveraged new creative formats specifically for a lot of launch events. So we have done a lot of work with brands across segments, whether you look at brands in CPG space. We have some great case studies with Cadbury's when they had during their Rakhi last year, where they tested out some new creative formats and ensured that, again, they pivoted it a lot to brand because they were testing out new video formats. But I think that's one case study which comes to my mind. We had Vivo test out a lot of AR VR filters with us for launch of one of their brands. We had Samsung test out a new creative format for an unboxing campaign which they had for one of their launch. So I think across last 2 years of me being at Meta, I would have seen at least 200 plus examples of various brands trying out different formats in different categories. Samsung piloted a dealer-led campaign model where, again, they had differentiated creative formats, again, bringing in vernacular, and had tried out different formats across different markets. So I think whole lot of brands, right from small brands, we spoke of Wow, we spoke of Mama Earth. We have Uziva. We have a lot of these D2C players trying out different formats all the time. Some work for them, but again, it's completely linked to the business objective you want to drive. So if there is clarity on what is the business objective, and if this format will suffice the need of that business objective, then more often than not, the results are always favorable.
Right, interesting. I think, and I think you've always been, upping your game when it comes to anything creative on the platform. So great to see the innovation in that space. I think I have one last question to you. I think we briefly discussed this with Tanveer as well. So Neil discussed this in the first session. But I really want to know your point of view as well. I think a lot of brands today are trying to penetrate into the smaller cities as well, not just the urban cities, right? And there is, depending on where they lie in the growth journey, their strategy is completely different. So some of the things that we do for our brands is, trying to get them to engage with the consumer in the language that they speak, which is vernacular marketing, which is one of the main things that brands bank on. What are the other things that you would suggest, or the trends that you see that brands take up in order to penetrate into these markets and speak to those kind of audiences? Because it is also about convincing them to adopt a D2C offering that they are providing.
That's an interesting question. And if we were 5 years back or 10 years back, I would have said brands do brand launches by setting up kiosks in a local market in a smaller town, literally do consumer trials and ask consumers to come on their kiosk and do that trial. But we are in an era where the internet penetration in India is way past what anybody would have anticipated. E-commerce penetration has gone even wider. So I think one bit which you did talk about was how they are able to connect to the consumers, which is vernacular marketing, because that's really their aim, to kind of first connect with their consumer. But I think an important bit for them to do is also to have clearly communicated their USP. Because as I said, right, for smaller town, they are used to going to a retail store, knowing that they need to buy Surf Excel, or knowing that they need to buy a Pantene shampoo. Why do they need to buy a Mama Earth shampoo? They need to be very, very clear on the communication of the USP of the brand. Because most of the consumers, while the purchasing power is increased, but they are still very, very value conscious as we go to tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 cities, right? So what is the USP? What is the pricing parity? I think some of these additional points need to be very clear in their communication with their audience. And I think the second bit, which is really working as a trend in these areas, and Social Beat team will know it really well because they run the influencer marketing platform, is actually the impact of influencers. So I think the second thing which a lot of new brands, incumbent brands are doing to penetrate in smaller towns and cities is actually to use the power of influencers. So I think those are the two bits I would share.
Thanks, Suchi. I think you touched upon the creators as well, and a very insightful presentation. On the creators itself, I think Meta is having a lot of initiatives, including like Born on Instagram for creators. In terms of like the impact, are we like leading in the international space on leveraging creators, or are markets like US and China doing things differently or better? I think live commerce is also a trend which is picking up in some of the international markets. Where do you see in India compared to some of these international markets, in terms of leveraging the creators for driving sales?
So that's an interesting question, Sunil. Might not be possible for me to compare apples to apples, because also the markets are very, very different. And for example, US has been ahead of us in terms of creator community for a very long period of time. But like in most other things, India catches up much before anybody anticipates because of the talent we have here. So, creator commerce, creator ecosystem has become such a key focus for us at Meta India 2022. It's one of the key priorities we have on how do we continue to enable the creator ecosystem. So I wouldn't be surprised that when you ask me this question 2 years later, probably we'll surpass a lot of Western markets.
No, absolutely. I think like we have seen that transformation, especially in the last like 24 months. And I think the initiatives by Instagram and Meta itself, it's grown multifold over the last few years. So thank you for all that support, Ruchi, Sadvika as well. I think one question connected to like D2C brands, we're seeing a lot of them scale up their presence through the performance ads. And, when it comes to like running video campaigns, there is some hesitation because the ROI may not be instant. It might be after a few weeks, a few months. Would you like to share some case studies of from your experience, like how should brands look at that investment in like video assets for top funnel campaigns or bottom funnel campaigns?
Sure. So Sunil, I'm going to start by breaking a myth that video is for branding. I'm going to first break that myth because video spans across the funnel. So you can leverage video view campaigns for, throughout the funnel, whether it is conversion, awareness across, right? So that's point number one. Point number two, we've actually started seeing a lot of brands realize, and while Arjun is not on the call, but Dr. Vedyas was one of the brands where Arjun and I have had like hour-long conversations where I told him, how can you kind of, how do you really assess investment on branding in a week's time? Like, brand building is a long-term input. So, Dr. Vedyas has been one great example. We've seen investments from actually all the D2C brands which have grown on our platform. All the examples I shared, whether it was Mama Earth or Boat, for example, or other platforms like Zepto, etc., which are just coming up, right? We do see all of these brands ensuring that while chunk of the money is still performance, there is some part of money continuously at given intervals of time spent to ensure that the funnel doesn't dry up and you're creating brands. And also important, like, Sharanya asked me that question on, people are already aware of ITC. So frankly, if D2C brands will not invest in branding, then the likes of traditional brands will take over all the share on e-commerce platforms as well. So it'll be important. It's not a good to have, it's a must have for brands to invest across the stages of funnel.
Absolutely, Ruchi. And I think we've had a lot of support from the Meta team over the last few years in helping scale some of these D2C brands, including Boat, which you mentioned. So thank you so much to you, Sagrika, Harry, and the team, and obviously Archana, who leads the entire agency ecosystem support. Thanks a lot for taking out the time for this discussion as well. Any final takeaways to D2C founders and teams, Ruchi, before we wind up the session?
No, I think the only takeaway I will have is when D2C brand owners look at their profitability, they should also try and compare it. If they were to go the traditional way, how much would they have spent? And some of that distribution cost saving, if that can be invested back into brand building, versus looking at only a transactional performance marketing, some of that cost which you would have otherwise spent in sending it to 5,000 stores, like Arjun said, if you kind of reinvest that in just ensuring people are aware of your brand, your USP, I think that's an investment worth it to ensure that your brand is here for long term. So I think that's my only suggestion to D2C brand owners.
Thanks, Ruchi. Thanks for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Sharanya. Thanks, Sunil, for having us here. Thank you.
Thanks. Pleasure always, Ruchi, and look forward to meeting in person soon.